Hey guys, as usual, like and subscribe. If you haven't seen my other reviews of the BOBA FETT show, please check those out, as well as my sequel remake and some of the other stuff I talk about, some reviews of other Star Wars things and just commentary. And let's get into this. So this episode is really just a mess of things and doesn't a lot of small details that make it not make sense. It's sort of all over the place. So let's just talk about it because there's a lot to say. So right off the hop, Fennec starts disagreeing with Boba Fett about not allowing spice running on Mos Espa. It's like that's the whole thing he's been pushing this entire show is, oh, I don't want crime. Basically, Boba Fett went from a bounty hunter to now a landlord, right? He wants to be a landlord and he wants to get rid of all these criminals. So, and now at the very end of this show, she's taking issue with that. Like, that's pretty much been the message from the beginning from Boba Fett. Why now all of a sudden are you like, oh, we should allow some spice running, Fennec? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So then the Pink Ranger and the Red Ranger argumentatively tell Fett that they aren't going to go to the palace until the reinforcements they think are coming from Freetown. So basically Boba Fett wants the Power Ranger biker gang and all of his guys and his pigmen and everything to hunker down at Jabba's palace until the reinforcements arrive from Freetown. They just basically say they're not going to go. These young people that he's paying to be there, and Boba Fett, who's their boss, he's just like, okay, I guess we'll stay here, and they just stay in the blown up bar. And then Cad Bane goes to see the Pikes, and we find out that actually it was the Pikes that killed the Sand People, so Boba Fett was once again duped. And Boba Fett hasn't really exerted any force on anyone that mattered in this show really at all, right? Like, he just kind of just caves into everything. It's weird. And he makes this huge mistake and he goes after this biker gang, which he feels no remorse for. Like, after he finds out, he's just kind of like, yeah, that's what happened, even though he's trying to take crime out of Mos Espa. So it's like, what character is he? So anyway, he really hasn't done anything other than stand around talking without his helmet on, really, in this show. It's just bizarre. I will say, as someone who never got into the Clone Wars, I really do like this Cad Bane character. He's very cool, very well done with the voice and the mannerisms, the way he walks, costume, all of it. Just really well done, this character. It's actually kind of sad he wasn't in more than just what he's in. Again, it's just, this isn't Boba Fett. I don't know who this person is. So at this point, I'm still feeling the same way of the whole show. Why would the Pikes? Why would Cad Bane? Why would the mayor? Why would any of the other crime families, care about Boba Fett? Like right now, the setup is that the small band of misfits, led by Boba Fett, although Fennec does most of the talking, are taking on a well-organized, wealthy, and ruthless crime syndicate that goes beyond this system and has other people. Even adding Mando, it's like, why does the syndicate care about Boba Fett? If I was the Pikes, I'd be patting Fett on the head and saying, there, Boba, you can say you're running Mos Espa if you want to. Who cares? Like, he just said he's a landlord now of this area, and that means he is. And you're like, why do these guys even care? It doesn't make any sense. If you argue it's because Fett did what he did with the train, well, so what? Like, then bring more reinforcements, bring more things, and you'll see later in this episode that they do, and yet it doesn't make any sense. So then R2 flies Luke's X-Wing to the same mechanic on Mos Espa with Grogu inside. So obviously Grogu chose the chainmail off screen. My whole thing is, why didn't Luke just let him see him? He already voluntarily chose to leave with Luke in The Mandalorian, so he chose to go with Luke instead of staying with Mando already. And so Luke's making him make the same decision, and you're like, dude, he already made it. He walked over to your side. So this whole thing with the chainmail and the choosing this and that, he chose already. So then you put the chainmail in front of him, make him choose again, and he chooses it. It just doesn't make any sense. If Luke just lets Grogu see him once in a while, like when he was there, then that means Grogu remains protected. While on the other hand, if he goes out with Mando, he's susceptible to falling to the dark side or somebody abducting him, someone bad, like what was happening in Mandalorian, which happened. So it doesn't make sense in any capacity. He already chose, And again, Luke had attachments. So this whole thing with Grogu is nonsensical, and I think the only reason they did it is so they could have him use the Force in this episode 7. They did all of this for this one visual, and it's just so frustrating that they don't write a coherent story leading up to it. So then we are reminded that the other crime lord families are going to remain neutral while Boba is directly taking money out of their pockets. Just because they said they would. Like, yeah, because crime lord guys would never lie. It's like, so Boba Fett and Fennec and them are talking about, oh yeah, they made a deal, and Mando's like, oh really, they made a deal with you? Oh well, then let's trust that deal. So they're not going to do anything and remain like, why would they? You're a misfit band and you're stomping on their money. It doesn't make sense that you would even believe that they would do that. But again, Boba Fett's dumb, so in this show. So then we get to see Fennec and Boba Fett's strategy with this whole like Pike's coming to deal with them and da da da. And the strategy is to take their already tiny little crew, and instead of again going to Jabba's palace, they're going to scatter them around Mos Espa in little groups. So they put the Wookiee by himself in the middle of the city somewhere miles away. The Pigmen miles away over at the airport or whatever, Starport. The Power Rangers are somewhere else, I don't know, in the middle of the city. Like, how would this work? Their whole strategy is to see which area the Pikes attack. Meanwhile, you have the Pigmen at the Starport that can see when they arrive anyway. So why would you spread them all out like that? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And then the whole strategy was that wherever the Pikes went to attack, they would send reinforcements to that region. But the enemy's plan, which we find out, is to draw them out from wherever they are and just deal with them. So why would you spread out like that? It makes absolutely no sense. Anyway, then to show more incompetence, the protocol droids, Boba Fett's protocol droid sneaks up at them, and Fett says to Fennec, I thought you said nobody could sneak up on us. And Fennec makes this like mad face. Like they're almost like trying to imply that Fennec and Boba Fett are having like a little bit of a tiff with the whole, why aren't you letting some of the spice come through, and how did he sneak up on us, and you said they wouldn't be able to. But it leads to nowhere. Like, Fennec and Boba Fett never have any issues. So why would you have these pointless scenes with them looking like they're having conflict when they don't in the end? It doesn't make any sense. If they were trying to create like a tension-filled thing for this coming, war or whatever, gang war, whatever you want to call it, then fine, but have an impact. It had none. So what was the point? Then the Pikes send Cad Bane to come see Boba Fett, and he tells them they aren't getting any reinforcements, and he tells them that Bane tells Fett that he needs to let the spice move through Mos Espa, and all of this can be avoided, which is literally what Fennec now all of a sudden wants from earlier in the episode. So now I'm wondering what her motivation is for standing with Boba Fett and Mandalorian and all that. And then Cad Bane tells Boba Fett that the Pikes killed the Raiders. And that doesn't really make any sense to tell him that unless Cad Bane is up to something, at least at the time. That's what I thought. I guess it was just a way he's trying to get him to fight him. But he doesn't anyway, as they have a standoff, and Fett wants to actually fight Bane, and Fennec steps in and says, no, you can't do that, only on our terms. And so we finally get a chance to see Boba Fett do something in this entire series that's badass and hardcore by just going and fighting him. But no, he does what Fennec wants. And who works for him. I remind everybody, she works for him. And then Cad Bane tells him he's getting soft in his old age. And then Boba Fett's response to being told he's getting soft in his own age is, we all do. that literally, those two lines, Cad Bane saying you're getting soft in your old age, and Boba Fett responding we all do, sums up the entire show. Like, that's literally this entire show. And then the mayor's bumbling assistant comes running out. So they allowed him to hear their plans before in the last episode, which he was supposed to be a prisoner, and now They brought him to Mos Espa for some reason. At this point, I'm like, why is this guy even here? This doesn't make sense. Again, he's their prisoner. He should be at the palace. But anyways, he's just hanging out with them after he lied to them and was the mayor's, screwing around with the mayor. So then all of a sudden, the locals start shooting the Power Rangers who are in their own little. Remember, everybody's spread out. So of course, the crime families went back on their word. All the crime families went back on their word, which is what I said was going to happen from the very beginning of this show. I said, why would he trust them? It makes absolutely no sense. They're making money off of the spice. Why would they do this? So Boba Fett is really being portrayed overall in this entire show, and this is another example, as a really incompetent gangster. I don't know why he's portrayed that way, but if he is this incompetent, maybe he should have stayed bounty hunting. Maybe that would have been the route to take here, but no. And because their dumb strategy of spreading out, now each group and the Wookiee are all getting attacked separately. Brilliant strategy once again. So, and the pigmen are pushed off a cliff, so they're gone. And then Boba Fett says they need to gather their people and go after the Pikes. So he asked the mayor's assistant if they still operated out of Mos Eisley, the Pikes. If they still operated out of Mos Eisley. In other words, he knew that at some point they operated out of Mos Eisley and did nothing. So finally, the assistant has a reason to even be in this show right now and being with them instead of being a prisoner in a cell, whatever, at the palace. But if Fett knew, why didn't he bother to do anything before? The assistant says, yes, of course, they still are there. Okay, well, if you even had an inkling that they were there, why didn't you go and deal with them? Fennec saves the last few Power Rangers, and they go back to the sanctuary, which is really just the blown up bar. So then Fett and Mando have this conversation about how Fett can't abandon Mos Eisley, and they get ready to fight, and out of nowhere, the bumbling assistant says he could negotiate on their behalf to get them off the planet, which is, again, just another thing, just trying to give him lines, because he shouldn't even be in there. Like, why would you bring your prisoner with you? It makes no sense. And Fett agrees. But instead of giving his terms, he basically tells the Pikes to screw off and get out of here. And while they're distracted by the assistant telling them this news that that's how Boba Fett feels about them, Mando and Boba Fett fly out with their jetpacks and start fighting them. And Boba Fett and Mando get overwhelmed. There's too many guys. They get shot tons of times, and they're almost done and gonna be killed or taken captive, whatever. And all of a sudden, the Freetown people do show up to help. And one thing I'm going to say about the Freetown people, for regular folk, like town folk, they sure have really good blaster shots. Like, really good. Really well aimed. Way better than any stormtroopers of the Empire or the First Order that were trained. They just... why would you do that? Why would you make them so proficient? It makes no sense. And then the Power Rangers and the Wookiee show up. I'm not sure how the Wookiee got the knife out of his back from when he was attacked. He literally got a huge blade put in his back. It's not there now, and yet he's running around. And then, of course, they think that they've won this great victory because they've shot up a lot of the Pikes, and they're having this great, thing. And no, the huge machines show up. And I'm not really sure why these machines, these droids, I should say not machines, they're droids, why they weren't there at the very beginning. So the Pikes sent a whole pile of guys in, and the townspeople and Freetown people and Boba Fett and Mando and blah, 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 took care of them. Why didn't they send these droids in first and have all these guys with them instead of the separation? And then, then there's just less to deal with for Boba Fett and his little misfit crew. It just doesn't make any sense. None of the war strategy in the show makes sense on either side. It's silly, and it just doesn't make sense. If they had been sent in with the Pikes men and infantry, then it probably overwhelms Boba Fett's crew entirely. Or, for example, when Boba Fett and Mando come out with their jetpacks, if the droids had already been there, that's just so much to deal with. For just the two of them, they're probably dead now. So again, the war strategy is just really stupid. It doesn't make sense, and nobody would do it this way. They're basically just giant droidicas. They have the shields like the droidicas, and they can't shoot through them. So the droidicas shoot basically their blasters, like their lasers, and it allows Boba Fett's crew to run away. And then as soon as they're gone, the droidicas shoot their like larger sort of missile-style blasters or lasers and just completely blow up the tank that the townspeople were in. And then you're like, why didn't they just use that at the beginning? Why didn't they just shoot their missile-style ones right away and blow up the tank and all the townspeople? But because Boba Fett's crew has to win. Even though they don't make it make sense why he wins, he has to win. So you're just like, why did the droids wait to do that instead of just doing it from the beginning? And then we also find out that the droids are terrible shots. Like, they could have mowed down the townspeople, and yet they're like shooting way over top of them or like way missing them. It's really bad. Like, it's like this, none of this makes sense. Like, this should have been an easy sweep if they had just done the sensible, normal things, but they don't. So then the townies get caught behind this wall, and again, instead of the droidicas, they're not droidicas, but whatever they are, spider droids or these or scorpion droids, whatever, these huge droidicas, basically. Instead of them using, again, the big missile laser blast, they just keep shooting their crappy lasers, which can't even penetrate the wall. The same ones they used that couldn't penetrate the tank that the townspeople were hiding behind, and then they just blew up the tank right after anyway. And so you're like, what the point? What was the point of this? The whole point of this is to have a nonsensical strategic military battle where Boba Fett's crew has to win, and the writer couldn't think of a real creative way to have them win. So they just have these nonsensical details happen. This is what I was saying from the very beginning. It's just silliness. And what's even funnier is even though the Freetown people can't shoot through the shields, they just keep shooting them. They just sit there shooting them, even though it's doing absolutely nothing. It's just this weird, pointless nonsense. And actually, Mando does some of this too. He just keeps shooting at it, even though it's doing absolutely nothing. Think of something else to do, because clearly what you're doing isn't working. Like, if you're shooting at a barrack and you can't get through the blast door or whatever in a war, you don't just keep shooting it and shooting it and shooting it and shooting it pointlessly. This was all just poorly done. It looked low budget to me, the way they did it. It just didn't. It just was. It sucked. It just made no sense. As soon as you get to the details, it makes no sense. Then they decide, well, these giant droidicas are walking around Mos but that Mando's going to reunite with Grogu as crazy-haired lady. You know, remember Grogu landed at her shop or whatever, and her rickety droid cart come running. You know, Mando, she sees Mando, and Mando tells her to go, and so now they're running away from these droidicas, these giant droidicas, and then it's revealed that Grogu's there with her in a war zone that Luke sent her to, and then the droidicas shoot the droid and that's running the cart, and he flips over, and Mando saves Grogu. Then, which is again just why is he even there? Mando should have been able to visit him on the planet. Why did we even go through all this? Luke is dumb. Boba Fett's dumb. None of it makes sense. And then, as we all dreaded would happen, somehow in the time frame of this show, with everything else going on, Boba Fett had time to learn to ride the Rancor. Which I told you was going to happen. Now, obviously, I said he was going to fight Darth Maul because, in my view, probably Darth Maul's behind this whole syndicate and stuff. But either way, he's riding the Rancor. Again, instead of using the missile that blew up the tank, these giant droidicas just use their lasers, which they hurt the Rancor, but they don't kill him. Like, use your giant like missile-style blasters that we've seen now, and we know what they can do. We, as the viewer, are going, bruh, just blow the Rancor up. Why are you just using your regular lasers? It doesn't make any sense. Oh, but it does if you have just a nonsensical thing where they just have to win for reasons, and the Rancor has to do a bunch of stuff to save them for reasons. Like it. So anyway, the Rancor finally manages to take the one droidica down, but he doesn't take him down. He just kind of pushes on him until the shields go away, just enough for Mando to walk in and chop it up with the Darksaber. And then, of course, predictably, it's not completely dead, and Grogu has to save Mando from the big droid after Mando gets shocked. And he uses the Force to pull some bolt out of his leg, some big bolt, and then Boba Fett on his busting Bronco finishes him off because the Rancor then gets up and blah, 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 and then he deals with the droideka. And then another one of these droids is back with the townies and the Power Rangers, right? The ones, they would shoot the missile through the wall, just obliterate these people. They're still shooting lasers. Again, no missiles. Yeah, like I just said. From the droid, they could have just killed them all. And then it's basically a Godzilla versus Mothma in Mos Espa, just destroying stuff, knocking down buildings, probably killing citizens. And it's basically like a WWE style fight with this droid. Also, Rancors must be fast, because I was thinking about this. Boba Fett rode the Rancor back into Mos Espa from 60 miles away from his palace. His palace is 60 miles away. So if we clock the Rancor at roughly about T-Rex speed, that's 2 hours, right? That's about 30 miles an hour. So you're looking at about 2 hours. So that means the townies and this droideka had a 2-hour standoff while they're just shooting at nothingness, and it's shooting them and hitting the wall, and nothing's going on. That's literally what this means, guys. Like, this is how convoluted and stupid these details are. It makes no sense. How did he get there that... Well, he didn't get there that fast, but how did they have a standoff for 2 hours where nothing happened? It's just nonsense. And Boba Fett had this big concern earlier in the episode that the town would get ruined. You know, there was this portion of, you know, where he talked about this. But literally has his Rancor running through buildings all the time. He's like climbing on stuff, wrecking stuff. Where are the people? Like, somebody's dead from what this Rancor beast did. Like, he was like trashed like this whole area of Mos Espa. So that makes no sense. And then Boba Fett calls them his people. And that's even after the Rancor. So the droid was done. The Rancor killed it. And then the Rancor picks up basically the corpse of the droid and just flings it through this huge archway of the city and destroys it. It's like, why? What? None of this makes it. Just to have these visuals of the Rancor like having a fit. It's so just, none of it makes any sense. Then Cad Bane shows up and he sends the Rancor beast running with a simple wrist flamethrower. Same one Boba Fett has and that Mando has. Like, literally all the Rancor had to do is just swing his arm and send Cad Bane absolutely flying into oblivion through a wall. He's dead, whatever. He's, you know, the Rancor's been stabbed multiple times. He's taken multiple laser blasts. But, you know, that little bit of flame, boy, that was too much. And he runs away and leaving Boba Fett by himself. And running away again, climbing on buildings, wrecking buildings, destroying the city. Which Boba Fett apparently loves the people and you know, didn't want the city to get destroyed from this battle. It's just so dumb. And then Boba Fett flamethrows Cad Bane when they're having a little battle. So Boba Fett flamethrows Bane, and unlike the gigantic Rancor beast, Bane sort of just does tuck and roll, and then he shoots Fett in between his armor twice. Then Bane is overcome by Fett, even though he's shot him twice under his armor. And if you've ever watched Star Wars before, I don't know if Filoni and Favreau ever have, but when a guy gets shot with a blaster, he's pretty much dead every time. If it hits him like in his anywhere on his body, like where there's no armor. And somehow Boba Fett takes 2 blaster shots. Okay, taking 1 maybe, but 2, and he manages to flip around and kill Cad Bane with his gaffy stick. So, which is just so dumb, because he shouldn't even be able to move. He's taken 2 blaster shots. I've watched Star Wars. We've all watched it. That's not something people do. You're not able to take a blaster shot. Like, if somebody shot Obi-Wan in the stomach with a blaster shot, he's probably going to die. This is just so ridiculous. So, and it actually kind of takes me back to Kylo Ren, you know, takes Chewie's blaster and then beats Rey and Finn out to the rendezvous point with Chewie even though he should be wounded, somehow he runs out there faster than them. But then he still gets beat by Rey. It's just everything's so convoluted in Disney Star Wars. The other thing that's really not good writing is that they introduced Cad Bane. He's certainly in this episode, as far as Boba Fett goes, presented as sort of the main villain climactic thing, right? It's Cad Bane versus the bounty hunter versus former bounty hunter, now landlord, good guy, Boba Fett. But they didn't introduce Bane until the second last episode. He should have been in the whole show. Like, if you were leading up to this moment, Cad Bane should have been in the whole show. The way Cad Bane was killed was stupid and a waste, and he's a really cool bounty hunter they could have done a ton of things with, but they used him to try and elevate a crappy Boba Fett character in this show. And again, the fact that he wasn't throughout the whole show totally diminishes the whole thing anyway. So what you were using Cad Bane for, which was to elevate Boba Fett, you didn't do because you didn't have a setup that made the whole fight a huger issue than it could have been by having a build-up with Cad Bane in the series. So as the viewer, you're like, oh, that sucks. Cad Bane died that way with no lead up and setup, and we didn't really care all that much. And then Boba Fett kills him nonsensically and going against basic Star Wars lore and physics, which is if you get shot by blasters. And what? This is how this guy dies? It was terrible. It was the worst climactic, scene between two guys. The way they built it up and everything. I mean, it's so terrible. It was just awful. Then the Rancor's on the loose now because he doesn't have Boba Fett, pulling his chains. He's just destroying the city even more. And then he looks like Godzilla, but he thinks he's King Kong, and he's climbing the tower and he's ripping stuff for no reason. Nobody knows why. He's freaking out. I don't know where they don't show any townspeople. Like, townspeople have to be getting killed here, but there's just none anywhere. Then Mando tries to stop the Rancor just for more visuals. He gets thrown, he gets beat up. And then Grogu, Mando's lying on the ground, and Grogu steps out to face the Rancor, and he puts the Rancor to sleep, and he curls up in a ball and sleeps with the Rancor like it's his dog. And this is equivalent of a 2-year-old, and he's using the Force to this level, where he literally puts the Rancor to sleep. Now, I will remind you that Luke Skywalker in Return of the Jedi, who trained under Yoda, and was a grown man and had been through a lot and done a lot of stuff, he didn't put the Rancor to sleep. So who is this person? And if this person's this Force sensitive, how the heck would Luke allow him to just go away instead of just, again, letting Mando see him once in a while when he, again, already chose to leave with Luke? He's so powerful. Why would you risk allowing that? It doesn't make any sense at all. None of it. This entire show. Disney Star Wars. Then Fennec goes to Mos Eisley, where Boba Fett already had known where the Pikes were, but never dealt with them anyway, and did stupid stuff. Like, if you knew they might be there, why didn't you go there instead of take the train down and cause all these problems? This whole thing's so convoluted. And he kills all the leaders of the gangs, and, Fennec goes and kills all the leaders of the gangs, and Pike, and the mayor, and everybody. And then Fett's walking around Mos Espa that his Rancor beast has tore down half of it, and is getting bowed to by the people there. So I guess the Rancor somehow didn't kill people. He just was running around and smashing stuff. So it's just so bad. So, and the show ends off right there. There's no loose ends. I'm guessing this is a one-off because they realize how bad this is. I don't know how they even made this. How this got made, just like The Last Jedi. So how this even got made, I don't know. But it's clear to me they never have any plans, right? Throw 2 Mando episodes in there that were probably filmed for Mando's 3 that they now are, quote, postponing. Mix it all around. Nobody knows what they're doing. It's a complete mess. There's no coherency in the story at all. None of Luke it makes no sense. Grogu, what's going on? Let's do the scene off screen instead of showing Grogu choose. It's just so bad. So my thoughts on Cad Bane, just to finalize my thoughts on sort of the series and stuff like that. What a terrible way to go out. I kind of already said it. This guy should have maybe actually had his own show instead of Boba Fett. I would have been way more interested in watching that. Like, we already had Mando, we had the good guy bounty hunter. Like, Cad Bane would have been the juxtaposition show if you were going to go that route. Would have been amazing. Instead, they went with Boba Fett goes from bounty hunter to landlord. Really weird decision. Like, a Cad Bane show would have been way better as far as I'm concerned. You would have seen the villainous side, bounty hunter versus the Mando turning into sort of a good bounty hunter with Grogu. You didn't need a Boba Fett show of him being a good guy turned, or bounty hunter turned good guy. You already had that with Mando. So again, you do the Cad Bane show. It's the opposite. Then you have a climax with Mando maybe and Cad Bane, the good and the bad bounty hunter. But no, they threw the Boba Fett show in for absolutely no reason other than fan service. It's ridiculous. And again, the Mando episodes, terrible. Why did the show need to switch to Mando so Grogu could save the day, I guess, at the end, because nobody cared about Boba Fett. Again, poor war planning, and you still get the win. Just shows that it's dumb. In previously in Star Wars, whenever you had sort of a rebel group versus sort of a larger organization, there was always reasoning going behind what they were doing, but the whole planning of Mando, but they still win because reasons. A very predictable show. If you go back and read my reviews, it's very predictable. Even some stuff that's in this episode, I predicted, or at least half predicted. Very piss poor writing. And then, just to finish off here, guys, I know this video is pretty long, but why is Mando leaving at the end? I thought he was working pro bono for Fett. Right? Remember? Oh, I'm going to join you. I'm going to work for you for free because I believe in your cause and I'm your friend. No, he leaves, but that's because they have to go do his show, so they have him leaving because they don't want to do a Boba Fett show anymore because nobody cares about Boba Fett. It's just, why did they make this show? This show is completely pointless. Anyway, guys, like, subscribe, throw some comments in what you think. This, to me, is awful. This show is awful. Like and subscribe. Have a good day.